He has played just one NFL season, but it already appears that the Pittsburgh Steelers are set for the foreseeable future with Zach Frazier at center. Coming off a first-team All-Rookie season and winning the franchise's Joe Green Award as the best rookie, Frazier already finds himself as a key building block for the black and gold. He might be one of the best young interior offensive line building blocks in the NFL, too. For NFL.com's Nick Shook, that's the case. In his all-under-25 team he picked for the site Tuesday, Frazier was the clear-cut choice at center. Frazier has just one NFL campaign under his belt, but gave the Steelers the kind of reliability they've lacked from the ultra-important center position since Maurkice Pouncey's last season in 2020, registering a top 5 offensive grade among all centers last season, per PFF, Shook writes. Frazier followed in Pouncey's footsteps by earning the team's Offensive Rookie of the Year award, the first time it was given to a center since Pouncey received it in 2010, suggesting the Steelers have finally found their successor at the pivot. General Manager Omar Khan has effectively rebuilt the Pittsburgh offensive line in short order, and Frazier seems like the best choice of all, with many years of success ahead of him. That many years of success ahead of him line from Shook is the general consensus with Frazier. That's a testament to not only his talent level, but also how he performed as a rookie, making the jump from West Virginia to the NFL look rather seamless. Longtime Steelers reporter Mark Kaboly, during a previous appearance on 93.7 The Fan, said he believes Frazier will be an 8 to 10-time Pro Bowler and should receive multiple All-Pro accolades. That's lofty expectations for Frazier, but that's a sign of how good he was last season stepping in as the starting center and solidifying the role in Pittsburgh. Throughout their history, the Steelers have typically had great center play. Names like Ray Mansfield, Mike Webster, Dermontti Dawson, Jeff Hardings, and Maurkice Pouncey come to mind. Frazier is clearly the next in line. As part of a major rebuild in the trenches under GM Omar Khan, Frazier is the key foundational piece for the black and gold. Though Broderick Jones and Troy Fautanu were drafted higher, Frazier might be the best of the bunch. He's a powerful run blocker and was very good in pass protection last season, allowing just one sack when the Cleveland Browns stunted Myles Garrett into him in Week 12. Tough matchup for a center there against maybe the best pass rusher in football. Moving forward, the future is incredibly bright for Frazier. He might not have been ranked among the best interior linemen in football, but he'll be there eventually. The Steelers landed a terrific player. Dan Marino is one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history. Over his 17-year career with the Miami Dolphins, he threw for 61,361 yards and 420 touchdowns. While Marino spent his whole career in Miami, he's from Pittsburgh, a slight sore spot for some Steelers fans. The Steelers had the opportunity to draft Marino, but instead chose Texas Tech DT Gabe Rivera. That decision haunted them for years. However, analyst Pete Prisco isn't sure Marino would have had the same success had he played for his hometown team. If Dan Marino had ended up in Pittsburgh playing quarterback for the Steelers, rather than playing in the conditions in South Florida and Miami, he would have been an entirely different quarterback, Prisco said Tuesday on the Two Pros and a Cup of Joe podcast. It's true that Miami and Pittsburgh have vastly different weather. During football season, the Steelers get a good taste of winter. They also often deal with ugly conditions before winter begins, with rain and cold plaguing them. Their stadium being right next to a river doesn't help with that, either. Oftentimes, it takes a strong-armed quarterback to succeed with the Steelers. However, Marino was born and raised in Pittsburgh. He played 4 years of college football at the University of Pittsburgh. At that point, he was probably used to Western Pennsylvania weather. Also, Marino had one of the best arms in the history of football. He had the tools to be just as successful with the Steelers as he was with the Dolphins. Prisco doesn't believe that's true, though. He would have been different, he said. Go look at his numbers at Pitt. They weren't as great as you think they were. In 4 years at Pitt, Marino threw for 7,905 yards, 74 touchdowns, and 64 interceptions. He also attempted over 1,000 passes. Are those perfect numbers? No, but consider that Marino played there from 1979 to 1982. The game was completely different then, especially in college. Compare Marino's stats to those of John Elway, who was the first overall pick in the same draft as Marino. Elway threw for 9,349 yards, 77 touchdowns, and 39 interceptions. However, he also attempted almost 200 more passes than Marino. Therefore, their numbers aren't as far apart as they seem to be. Elway's numbers are better, but it's not like Marino was withering away at Pitt. He was still good enough to be a first-round pick, and eventually, he built a career good enough to get enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. For what it's worth, Marino thinks not playing for the Steelers was good for him, but not for the same reasons that Prisco suggests. Leaving home forced him to mature. Perhaps staying in Pittsburgh would have hurt his career, but the weather likely wouldn't have been a problem. The Pittsburgh Steelers have a new potential trade target in San Francisco 49ers wide receiver Jauan Jennings. Jennings wants a new contract from the 49ers after a breakout season, and he will be making just $7.5 million on his current contract. As a result, Jennings would like to either be paid by the 49ers or get traded out of San Francisco. That could give the Steelers a natural target on the market. Jennings, 28, had 77 receptions for 975 yards and 6 touchdowns last season, a career high in all categories. Now, he is set to be the team's WR2 heading into the year, as long as Brandon Ayuk can recover in time for the start of the year. That makes him a vital piece for the 49ers. A former 7th-round pick out of Tennessee, Jennings came along slowly and developed a niche role as a blocking wide receiver that would do the dirty work before expanding his role last year with injuries and uncertainty in the 49ers' wide receiver room. The likely cost for someone like Jennings would be an early day 3 pick, especially since the Steelers will have to give him a notable pay raise, likely into the territory of $15 million per year given his production in 2024. The Pittsburgh Steelers have tried to form an offensive identity in their post-Ben Roethlisberger days. Heading into 2025, they might finally have one. There are still some questions surrounding the unit, but the Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf duo rolls into the season with high expectations. Former Patriots defensive back Devin McCourty is especially bullish on Metcalf. I think DK Metcalf is definitely the big acquisition of this offseason, McCourty said Tuesday on 93.7 The Fan. I think for this Pittsburgh Steelers team, when you look at last year, it just felt like they're playing well enough on defense that if we could just find a way to score more touchdowns, find a way to make some drives a little bit longer, we would have won this game, or we would have won that game. There was actually a time that the Steelers' offense was humming during the 2024 season. Pittsburgh scored 44 points in a win against the Cincinnati Bengals, 37 of those coming from the offense. Then the Steelers beat the Cleveland Browns at home en route to a 10-3 record. We all know how things came crashing down after that. The offense seemed to lose all the consistency it built during that span. With Metcalf, things might be different this time around. The Steelers still have a similar lack of proven depth at the position compared to last year. But essentially swapping Metcalf for George Pickens, they've now got a WR1 with more of a track record. There are times when Pickens checked out mentally on the field during that 5-game losing streak. He struggled with injuries during that span as well. If Metcalf can avoid a similar fate this year, the Steelers' offense will have much more of an identity rounding out the season. Of course, a receiver sometimes can only do as well as his quarterback plays. With Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball, McCourty has high expectations. When you add Aaron Rodgers and give him a DK Metcalf, I think a lot of people are now feeling like, okay, our defense has an expectation of how they're going to play. Now we can match that a little bit offensively, McCourty said. Despite their offensive struggles over the last few years, Pittsburgh's defense has remained consistent for the most part, keeping the team competitive. Now, the Steelers might finally have an offense to go along with it. With Rodgers in the building, the offense should open up much more than it did with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields last season. There's plenty of promise on the offensive line, and high hopes for the backfield as well. If everything comes together, the Steelers have the chance to have a really good offense. DK Metcalf might be the heart of it.